grade. It's Miss Baker, Miss Russell, whichever you prefer. I have our special guest here. Yep. Pickle's in the house. No, you're not. He may look a little different. He did not go on a diet. He went to the groomers. He got his hair cut. So he's going to be helping us with our reading today on the witches. And we are on page 25. If you are on the PDF, if you are not, it is okay. You can just listen to while I read. Okay, so he will not be helping us read. And he's gone. Okay, just kidding. So you'll just have me today as we read. We're on page 25, Frizzled like a Fritter. And let's get started. I don't know why I'm waving.
All the women, or rather the witches, were now sitting motionless in their chairs and staring as though hypnotized at somebody who had suddenly appeared on the platform. That somebody was another woman. The first thing I noticed about this woman was her size. She was tiny, probably no more than 4.5 feet tall. She looked quite young, I guessed about 25 or 6, and she was very pretty. She had on a rather stylish long black dress that reached right to the ground, and she wore black gloves that came up to her elbows. Unlike the others, she wasn't wearing a hat. She didn't look to me like a witch at all, but she couldn't possibly not be one. Otherwise, what on earth was she doing up there on the platform? And why, for heaven's sake, were all the other witches gazing at her with such a mixture of adoration, awe, and fear? Very slowly, the young lady on the platform raised her hands to her face. I saw her gloved fingers unhooking something behind her ears. And then she caught hold of her cheeks and lifted her face clean away. The whole of that pretty face came away in her hands. It was a mask. As she took off the mask, she turned sideways and placed it carefully upon a small table nearby. And when she turned around again and faced us, I very nearly screamed out loud. That face of hers was the most frightful and frightening thing I have ever seen. Just looking at it gave me the shakes all over. It was so crumpled and widened, so shrunken and shriveled, it looked as though it had been pickled in vinegar. It was a fearsome and ghastly sight. There was something terribly wrong with it, something foul and putrid and decayed. It seemed quite literally to be rotting away at the edges, and in the middle of the face, around the mouth and cheeks, I could see all the skin all cankered and worm-eaten, as though maggots were working away in there. There are times when something is so frightful you become mesmerized by it and you can't look away. I was like that now. I was transfixed. I was numbed. I was magnetized by the sheer horror of this woman's features. But there was more to it than that. There was a look of serpents in those eyes of hers as they flashed around the audience. I knew immediately, of course, that this was none other than the Grand High Witch herself. I knew also why she had worn a mask. She could never have moved around in public, let alone book in at a hotel with her real face. Everyone who saw her would have run away screaming. "The doors!" shouted the Grand High Witch in a voice that shrilled the room and bounced around the walls. "Are they chained and bolted?" "The doors are chained and bolted, your grandness," answered a voice in the audience. The brilliant snake's eyes that were set so deep in that dreadful, rotting, worm-eaten face glared unblinkingly at the witches who sat facing her. "You may remove your gloves," she shouted. Her voice. I noticed that same hard metallic quality at the voice of the witch I had met under the concord tree. Only it was far louder and much, much harsher. It rasped, it grated, it snarled, it scraped, it shrieked, and it growled. Everyone in the room was peeling off her gloves. I was watching the hands of those in the back row. I wanted very much to see what their fingers looked like and whether my grandmother had been right. Ah, yes! I could see several of them now. I could see the brown claws curving over the tips of the fingers. They were about 2 inches long. Those claws! And sharp at the ends. "You may remove your shoes," barked the Grand High Witch. I heard a sigh of relief going up from all the witches in the room as they kicked off their narrow, high-heeled shoes. And then I got a glimpse under the chairs of several pairs of stocking-good feet, square and completely toeless. Revolting they were, as though the toes had been sliced away from the feet with a carving knife. "You may remove your wigs," snarled the Grand High Witch. She had a peculiar way of speaking. There was some sort of foreign accent there, something harsh and guttural, and she seemed to have trouble pronouncing the letter W. As well as that, she did something funny with the letter R. She would roll it round and round her mouth like a piece of hot pork crackling before spitting it out. "Remove your wigs and get some fresh air into your spotty scalps," she shouted. And another sigh of relief arose from the audience as all the hands went up to the heads and all the wigs, with the hats still on them, were lifted away. There now appeared in front of me row upon row of bald female heads, a sea of naked scalps, every one of them red and itchy looking from being rubbed by the linings of the wigs. I simply cannot tell you how awful they were, and somehow the whole sight that was made more grotesque because underneath those frightful scabby bald heads, the bodies were dressed in fashionable and rather pretty clothes. It was monstrous. It was unnatural. Oh, heavens, I thought. Oh, help. Oh, Lord, have mercy on me. These foul, bald-headed females are child killers, every one of them. And here I am imprisoned in the same room, and I can't escape. At that point, a new and doubly horrifying thought struck me. My grandmother had said that with their special nose holes, they could smell out a child on a pitch-black night from right across the other side of the road. Up to now, my grandmother had been right every time. It seemed a certainty, therefore, that one of the witches in the back row was going to sniff me out at any moment, and then yell of "dogs' droppings" would go up all over the room, and I would be cornered like a rat. I knelt on the carpet behind the screen, hardly daring to breathe. Then suddenly I remembered another very important thing my grandmother had told me. "The dirtier you are," she had said, "the harder it is for a witch to smell you out." How long since I had last had a bath? Not for ages. I had my own room in the hotel, and my grandmother never bothered with silly things like that. Come to think of it, I don't believe I had a bath since we arrived. When I had last washed my hands or face? Certainly not this morning. Not yesterday either. I glanced down at my hands. They were covered with smudge and mud and goodness knows what else besides. So perhaps I had a chance after all. The stink waves could possibly get out through all that dirt. "Witches of England!" shouted the Grand High Witch. She herself, I noticed, had not taken off either her wig or her gloves or her shoes. "Witches of England!" she yelled. The audience stirred uneasily and sat up straighter in their chairs. "Miserable witches!" she yelled. "Useless, lazy witches! Feeble, fibbering witches! You are a heap of idle, good-for-nothing rooms!" A shudder went through the audience. The Grand High Witch was clearly in an ugly mood, and they knew it. I had a feeling that something awful was going to happen soon. "I am having my breakfast this morning," cried the Grand High Witch, "and I am looking out of the window at the beach, and what am I seeing? I am asking you, what am I seeing? I am seeing a revolting sight. I am seeing hundreds, I am seeing thousands of rotten, repulsive little children playing on the sand. Is it putting me right off my food? Why have you not got rid of them? She screamed. Why have you not rumbled them out, these filthy, smelly children? With each word she spoke, flecks of pale blue phlegm shot from her mouth like little bullets. I am asking you, she screamed. Nobody answered her question. Children smell, she screamed. They stink out the world. Do you not our children around here? The bald heads in the audience all nodded vigorously. One child of week is no good to me, the Grand Witch cried out. Is that the best you can do? We will do better, murmured the audience. We will do much better. Better is no good here, shrieked the Grand High Witch. I demand maximum results. So here are my orders. My orders are that every single child in this country shall be rubbed out, squished, squirted, squivered, and riveted. Before I come here again in 1 year's time, do I make myself clear? A great gasp went up from the audience. I saw the all witches all looking at one another with deeply troubled expressions. And I heard one witch at the end of the front row saying aloud, All of them? We can't possibly wipe out all of them. The Grand High Witch whipped around as though someone had stuck a skewer into her bottom. Who said that? She snapped. Who dare argues with me? It was you? Was it not? She pointed at a gloved finger as sharp as a needle at the witch who had spoken. I didn't mean it, your grandness, the witch cried out. I didn't mean to argue. I was just talking to myself. You dare to argue with me? Screamed the Grand High Witch. I was just talking to myself, cried the wretched witch. I swear it, your grandness. She began to shake with fear. The Grand High Witch took a quick step forward, and when she spoke again, it was in a voice that made my blood run cold. A stupid witch who answers back must burn until her bones are black, she screamed. No, no, begged the witch in the front row. The Grand High Witch went on. A foolish witch without a brain must sizzle in the fiery flame. Save me, cried the wretched witch in the front row. The Grand High Witch took no notice of her. She spoke again. An idiotic witch like you must roast upon the barbecue. Forgive me, O your Grand Highness, cried the miserable culprit. I didn't mean it. But the Grand High Witch continued with her terrible recital. A witch who dares to say I'm wrong will not be with us very long. A moment later, a stream of sparks that looked like tiny white hot metal filings came shooting out of the Grand High Witch's eyes and flew straight towards the one who had dared to speak. I saw the sparks striking against her and burrowing into her, and she screamed a horrible howling scream, and a puff of smoke rose up around her. A smell of burning meat filled the room. Nobody moved. Like me, they were all watching the smoke, and when it had cleared away, the chair was empty. I caught a glimpse of something wispy white, like a little cloud, fluttering upwards and disappearing out of the window. A great sigh rose up from the audience. The Grand High Witch glared around the room. I hope nobody else is going to make me cross today, she remarked. There was a deathly silence. Frizzled like a fritter, said the Grand High Witch. Cooked like a carrot. You will never see her again. Now, when we get down to business.
Whoa. I don't know about y'all, but this was a very intense chapter. We definitely got to learn about the Grand High Witch some. So with that being said, I want you to character analyze, give the character traits of the three: the Grand High Witch, the boy, which is also our narrator, and the grandmother. So based on previous actions we've read or dialogue between characters that we've seen happen or thoughts that the characters might have. So actions, dialogue, thoughts. What type of traits do you think those three characters have? And remember, some of the traits are they're very honest, they're very rude, they're very mean, selfish, loyal. Those are all traits that people can carry, as well as our characters. So character analyze those three characters in our book, and you can put the comments down below. Next, for our reading, Good Readers Do, I want you to make a connection. Remember, we've talked about how you don't just have to make a connection with, Miss Baker, I've never been in a hotel with witches in a meeting, stuck behind a screen. How do I connect? Okay. You can connect with emotions. You can connect if you've ever been with someone that scares you and makes you frightened. I can see the boy is extremely frightened right now. So have you ever been put in a situation like that? Or remember, text to text. You've read a similar thing that you can connect with, situation or character feeling scared. Or text to world. You've seen out in the world this going on. Somehow you can relate. Or text to self. You've personally been in a frightful situation. Okay, so we're going to make a connection again for today. And we are also going to make a visual. I don't know about you, but I definitely visualized as a reader with those words flowing through my head. I pictured this little old witch crying for her life. Please don't, please don't. And then all of a sudden, poof, into a cloud of smoke. Okay, and so you can describe that as well for your visual. And then last but not least, we have our challenge. So yesterday, I hope some of y'all got to make up a exercise. Miss Baker made up one yesterday. It's called the Karate Chop Cat. So you take your pickles. Don't take pickles. You take your cat or a dog, whichever, as long as they are friendly and allow you to. And he's not going to let me because he keeps running away from me right now. He is very camera shy. Okay. And you take your cat. So I don't have a cat, but you take your cat and chop, 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 chop. That's my exercise. It's kind of like, or you can do the karate chop cat, where you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and get to it, and then switch 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. So that's Miss Baker's exercise that I made up yesterday. For today's challenge, you are going to create a new recipe. You do not have to make it. You do not have to show me pictures of it. Do not go cause danger in your house or your kitchen. Okay. But create a recipe. So what out of your favorite ingredients? So like I love marshmallows, ice cream, donuts, and Jell-O. So out of those, I would start to create some type of new recipe. Okay. Whether I bake it, whether I fry it, whether I just eat it straight together and combine all of them. Okay. Whether I put my marshmallows on top of my donut, whichever. Come up with a new recipe with using your favorite food ingredients. Okay. And try to incorporate a vegetable in there. I know how I did not incorporate any vegetables. But, so, let's recap. You're going to do character trait on all three characters, the Grand High Witch, the narrator, and the grandmother. You are going to do a connection, whether it's text to text, text to world, or text to self. And you're going to do a visual. What part stuck out to you the most in your head while you were listening to the words? And then your challenge, if you would like, is to create a recipe, a new recipe, using your top favorite food as the ingredients. Okay. I do want to share with you, I know I was getting a lot of messages yesterday from your parents about that this is mandatory. This is not mandatory whatsoever. This is just if you want to have fun, if you want to listen to the witches, if you want to practice your reading strategies, And if you're bored and if you want something to do, it just gives you something fun to do. Let me say this again. This is not mandatory whatsoever. Okay. We will be sending home packets starting Monday. Monday, we will be sending home packets. And those are for you too, so you're not going a month without learning. We are trying to provide y'all as much learning and fun still, even though we have to quarantine ourselves. Okay. So remember, not mandatory, just a fun way to see Miss Baker again. And hopefully y'all are making comments so I can talk to you all. And we are going to do a YouTube live, and I will give you more of that information on Monday, what day and what time we will be doing that YouTube live. So stick around for more updates. Okay. I'll talk to y'all later. I love you. I miss you.